American Hearts Radio presents Victory and Valor Memories, remembering and honoring our heroic veterans, with hosts Dennis Aloia and Hal Burke.
The gentleman sitting next to me, his name is Mr. Hal Burke. He and I have known each other for many, many years. We served together in the U.S. Navy very proudly a lifetime ago. Hal, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Denny.
And it's great to be with you here again. I know you've got some new stories to share with us. But first, before we get to the new subject matter, I'd like to take you back to the last time that we were here and did the interview regarding the five Sullivan brothers. And the link there between that story and the kissing sailor story, which was the famous photograph in Times Square at the end of World War II with the sailor kissing the nurse. But anyway, if you can kind of bring us up to speed on what's happened since the story was introduced to you here the last time you were here for a visit.
Well, since our last visit a year ago, a lot has happened. And on the sad note, George died in February of this year.
This is George
Mendoza, the kissing sailor, and I had the honor of attending his funeral and his memorial service out in Newport, Rhode Island. And I have to tell you, it was a very emotional time. There were over 400 people that were there, and I had an opportunity to meet not only his family and friends, but shipmates that not only served in the Navy with him, but also served on his commercial fishing vessel. And there's some amazing stories. Since I've been here, I say it's been an amazing journey, because thanks to you and the phone call that started it all back in 2011, this is for my wife Nancy and I. It's been an incredible journey. Since the show last year that we filmed here, I have addressed over 6,000 people.
Wow. Regarding the story of the Sullivan?
Regarding the story of the five Sullivan brothers and the historical connection to George, the kissing sailor, Mendoza. And it's been very gratifying to have students, teachers, administrators, and veterans come up to me afterwards and say, I didn't know that. Thank you.
There's always a story underneath the story people know, it seems like, and it takes a good investigative person like yourself to uncover the interesting parts of a story that everybody thinks they know completely everything about.
Well, it's an amazing story. I hope someday to write a book about it, and I hope it's someday either made into a play or a movie, because it has so many pieces to this puzzle that when I talk to the audiences, I always say it's like a puzzle, and the pieces come together, and at the end it's like a mosaic, because it's a beautiful story of the people involved in the story. And as I said, I've spoken to probably over 6,000 students, administrators, faculty, veterans, historical societies. Downers Grove North High School, there were 2,800.
That's in Illinois?
In Illinois.
Suburb of Chicago?
Right. Downers Grove North High School. And that was last November. Veterans Day, and I spoke to over 2,800 students, as I say, administrators, faculties, and veterans. And I had the honor this Veterans Day of speaking to 1,800 Riverside Brookfield High School students, where I graduated in 1960.
Now, would you say that the reaction to all these different diverse groups has been pretty much the same? They're very impressed with the story initially, and then talking about the time frame of World War II. The students today, I don't think, know as much about World War II as they should.
No, they don't, and I have to say they want to know.
How did you bridge that? How did you bridge that gap between the stories of World War II and what's relevant today?
Well, what I did at the last presentation I gave at Riverside Brookville High School, I thought about it the night before, and how I bring these students into the story. And as I, thanked all of them for having the veterans there for Veterans Day, commemorating them, I decided to bring them into the conversation by asking a couple of questions. And now you have 1,800 students there.
Right.
And I said, how many of you, your parents, grandparents, were veterans? And I was shocked that over 50%
Wow.
of the kids raised their hands, the students raised their hands. And then I said, how many of you have friends, family, relatives living or currently serving in the military? I was shocked. There were over 60% of the kids that raised their hands, the students. And I said, I just want you to know that that's a common thread running through the veterans you see seated before you, World War II, Vietnam, Gulf War, Korea, and the Gulf War, the young kids coming back from the Gulf, Middle East, and it just seemed to bring everybody into the conversation. And at the end of my presentation, they gave me a standing ovation.
Well, you couldn't get any better than that.
Yes.
There's an interesting fact that's widely known, and that's approximately 1% of the American population serves in the military.
Exactly.
1%.
1%.
Now, you get 50% approximately of the students saying they have a member of the family or friends that have served.
Yes.
That tells you something about the patriotic nature of their families and friends.
Exactly.
Doesn't it?
There's a history there.
There really is. Yeah.
And they need to know about the sacrifices. I don't want to overuse the term the greatest generation, but these were ordinary people. My parents, my grandparents were part of that, my uncles, or they were part of that greatest generation where ordinary people performed extraordinary tasks.
Yeah, for sure. Now that the conversation we had and the information that you put together for that conversation got turned into a video. The video was submitted to NSASN, I believe. They run a film festival, and actually that video is now a finalist. It's been selected as a finalist in the documentary category.
Exactly. Our discussion over a year ago is now in a documentary format, and we're waiting for the final results of the festival, so to speak.
Now, also, due to that initial conversation we had in video that was created, you have already started a business based upon these stories that you want to present and expand upon. What's the name of your business, Hal?
Well, last year, my wife Nancy and I, because we wanted to pursue this presentation of the historical facts, formed a company called Victory and Valor Memories, LLC. And it was a way for me to professionally put together a program, and I have given presentations to historical societies, public libraries, senior residences, and I mentioned before, not only to the two high schools, but also I gave I was guest speaker invited for the Tin Can Sailors, their national convention in Buffalo, New York last year, where the Sullivans is moored as a museum ship, National Historic Landmark, and I addressed over 300 sailors, Tin Can Sailor members in attendance.
So this show launched quite a journey for you.
And it's been amazing. It's been an amazing journey. And
well, thanks to American Hearts Radio and Television Network and Mike Aloia and company and the folks behind the scenes and our great engineering team consisting of Matt Roberts.
Yeah,
it's all
marketing. Great job.
But I think we've uncovered a quest that's worthy, something that needs to be shared with the general public, especially, I think, younger people, to get a sense of our American history and what it takes to be a great country and preserve freedom. And on that note, it's my understanding that you have, since you've put together the Sullivan story, you also came upon another story that you jumped headlong into recently about 3 Medal of Honor winners that lived in your area, and I'd like you to start sharing that story with our audience, if you will.
Well, let's begin with the magic phone call, like
Phone call,
like you did for me in 2011,
right?
About the Sullivan. It kind of ignited the Sullivan story.
I told you, just to update our viewers, that the USS the Sullivans, which you served on, was having a reunion.
That's right.
You were a member of the ship's company, and I said you should join the reunion. That's how this whole journey.
Started, and then that's where I learned that the Kissing Sailor served on the ship.
Yeah.
And the book was written by Lawrence Varia, The Kissing Sailor, that I had to read before I could go visit George.
Oh, okay.
So now we move forward.
And you get another call.
I get a phone call, and it's from a very good friend of mine. His name is Frank Trout. Now, Frank was 101st Airborne, Vietnam veteran. I asked him how long he served in Vietnam. He said, till I got shot in the head. So a quarter of an inch and he wouldn't be with us, but Frank's an amazing guy. He not only was a policeman on the Westmont Police Department where I live.
That's in Illinois. Suburb of Chicago.
Right. And then when he finished that, he became fire chief for Westmont.
Wow.
He is also the commander of the American Legion Post 338 in Westmont. Well, Frank and I are good friends. And he called me and he said, Hal, are you aware of the fact that there is a young man buried at the Clarendon Hill Cemetery, which is the suburb just south of us, and he is a posthumous Medal of Honor recipient, and he was born living in Westmont. His grandfather was 5-term mayor of Westmont in the 30s and again in the 50s, and there's no memorial to him.
This is a Medal of Honor recipient.
Medal of Honor recipient.
Wow.
And his name is James William Robinson Jr. Now, I said, I find it hard to believe. And of course, I want to give credit because Frank read the story about James Robinson in James Robinson's cousin, Fred Muddinger, was retired from the school district. He was a former superintendent. And he had written a history about the early days of education in Westmont, and part of the story was a 3-page spread. It was part of what they call Westmont Stories, of his cousin James Robinson, who he learned about his death while he was in school, and nothing was ever done to honor him.
Well, hold that thought, because I wanted to mention to our audience that in addition to James Robinson's history and story, you also got involved with 2 other Medal of Honor winners.
That came later, though. What we immediately did, because he was killed on April 11th, 1966. And I found out about this just before the date that he was killed in the battle in Vietnam. He was an Army sergeant. And this guy has an amazing story. So before going on to, again, this magical trip that new things become known. James Robinson's family lived in Westmont until he was a teenager. Then the family moved to Lyons, Illinois, and of course you're from the Chicago area.
Right.
It's a suburb, couple of communities over, and the family lived there. And then apparently the parents got divorced. The father moved to Detroit. Then he went on to Washington D.C. Well, James went to Morton High School, where we grew up in Cicero, and he joined the Army after high school. He joined the Marine Corps after high school, and he served 3 years honorably in the Marine Corps, and he was stationed in Okinawa. And while he was there, he learned martial arts and became a master in martial arts. Black belt, whatever. And when he was discharged honorably from the Marine Corps, he opened a school. His father was then living in Virginia, so he went to Virginia, and he opened a martial arts school. And he did that for a year. He didn't care for it, so then he decided he wanted to make the military a career, and he enlisted in the Army. And he wanted to go to Vietnam. And he went to Panama for training, and his younger brother, Tom, who you met, was stationed there. He wanted Tom to re-up. Tom said, no, I'm finishing my enlistment. So James went on to Vietnam, and in the Battle of Cam he was killed and awarded the Medal of Honor.
Well, we've got some pictures to share with our audience
Yes.
about that, and I'd like to, at this point in time, if we can get into the pictures. And Mr. Robinson is the gentleman in the middle of the picture that you just described the history of. And I'd like you to identify the gentleman to, let's see, it would be looking from left to right, the fellow with the sailor uniform on. Who is
All right,
he?
well, what I wanted to say, which you alluded to earlier, was that in this journey of getting James Robinson recognition, which we went to Representative Roscom, and we put forth the proposal to have our post office renamed for James Robinson. And during this journey, I learned that not only was there James Robinson buried at the Clarendon Hill Cemetery, but there were 2 additional posthumous Medal of Honor recipients also buried there.
I see.
The sailor on the left is Fred Lester.
Uh-huh.
And he was killed on Okinawa. He was a Navy corpsman tending to the Marines on Okinawa.
Now, this was during World War II.
World War II, and his heroics, his citation, I could probably take the whole show talking about him, but he was bringing wounded Marines into safety, and he was killed during the invasion of Okinawa. James Robinson, I'll cover a little bit more later, but the Marine to the right is Lester Weber, and he's a young man from Hinsdale. And, Fred Lester was from Downers Grove,
Illinois.
Illinois, where I gave the speech to the high school students. That was his high school in World War II. Lester Weber, the Marine on the right, was killed in 1969 in Vietnam. So we found, and this is what's amazing, is that when I went to the cemetery office at the Clarendon Hill Cemetery, and the owner of the cemetery did not know that he had 3 Medal of Honor recipients buried there in his own cemetery.
Amazing. Well, back to Fred Lester, I think we've got another photograph or two related to his experiences as a Navy corpsman in World War II. What does this photograph depict?
The photograph on the, of course, our left is his picture of in a military. The picture to the right is the front entrance of the Clarendon Hill Cemetery, and the picture to the left, which I have another picture that's better, is a grade school that was named for him, Lester School in Downers Grove. The rest of the information there just pertains to his family and the different citations and different groups he belonged to.
Well, he was a Navy corpsman, but
Navy corpsman.
He served with the Marine Corps.
Yes.
And
he went through special training, and
there was a great movie, not about him, recently, about another gentleman who lived in Georgia, actually, called Hacksaw Ridge.
Yes.
He also was a
Navy corpsman.
He was a
conscientious objector.
He was an Army medic, and he won the Medal of Honor.
Yes.
For saving Marines and soldiers on
great
Okinawa.
movie.
He survived. Sadly, Mr. Lester did not.
Yeah.
Now the
next picture.
Yeah.
That shows the Navy Marine Medal of Honor. Each Medal of Honor has a different insignia for each military branch, but being that the Navy and Marines are together, this is the Medal of Honor that was awarded to Fred Lester.
I see.
And there's his grave at the Clarendon Hill Cemetery. We put flags on it on Veterans Day and all holidays and that. So this is the grade school that was named for him, Lester School, in Downers Grove, Illinois.
Okay.
And they have a memorial in the school to him as well. And this is the destroyer escort that was named for Fred Lester, USS Lester DE 1022.
Now, let me mention something here. I'm a former Navy veteran, and usually destroyers and destroyer escorts are named after Navy and Marine Corps heroes. In this case, they chose the right name.
Right.
I have an issue with naming ships after politicians.
I do too.
but I think the real heroes are our veterans.
Thank you.
And they deserve that honor.
Thank you.
Exclusively.
Okay, now we're going to move on to James Robinson, and the picture you see in the middle is, you can see he has a camouflage helmet on. That was his Marine picture. The picture to the right shows him in the jungles of Vietnam shortly before he was killed. He was with a group of soldiers. They were called mud soldiers. And you had an opportunity to come to Westmont and participate in the dedication
Right.
of the plaque, and you met one of the mud soldiers who was with him the day he died.
Yes, I did.
Phil Hall gave a very emotional talk about the gift.
And that's his high school.
It was this high school football picture to the left. This is a better picture of James in his Marine. He was quite a kid, quite a character, and he's the kind of guy you wanted to have a burger and a beer with. You know, just
Yes.
an amazing young man. He was killed during the Operation Abilene, and this battle that took place in Vietnam, it was the 1st Division, 16th Infantry Regiment. His company was Charlie Company, and there are the names of 39 soldiers that were killed in that battle that day, grouped together on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall.
What a sacrifice.
Yeah. And there's his Medal of Honor. Of course, that was issued when he was in the Army. That's the Army Medal of Honor.
Right.
And
below that,
there weren't a lot of pictures of him, and
Yeah.
that picture, that's their picture. I didn't use it, but with the Marine helmet.
and then
You can see the infantry rifle, so he was
right.
in combat.
that's the combat infantryman badge.
Yeah,
with
and during
rifle.
he was awarded the Medal of Honor for heroism. He had dragged several of his men to safety. They were almost decimated. Out of 134 men, as I mentioned, 39 were killed, and there were 84 that were wounded in the battle. And it was almost a 2-day battle, but he charged the enemy position. He had run out of ammunition. He charged the enemy position. A large caliber machine gun was decimating his men, so he charged that position with 2 hand grenades. And as he launched the 2 hand grenades, which killed the enemy and destroyed the gun, he was shot down. He was
I
killed.
see. So they lost a quarter of their men approximately in one day.
Yes.
Amazing.
The next picture is where I mentioned earlier the story started. The gentleman on the left side is Frank Trout. He was 101st Airborne Vietnam veteran, and there we are at James Robinson's grave. That's when we went out there to put floral piece for, he was killed, as I said, on April 11th, 1966. This gentleman is Phil Hall, and he was with James when he was killed. And he gave a talk, a little brief speech about what James did. And he called it the gift, and that's the story there. And he said, while some of us, survived this day, many didn't. And some who survived this day didn't survive Vietnam, meaning they came home with the scars.
Right.
Sergeant James Robinson's actions, without a doubt, spared the lives of Charlie Company men. And to go on, it basically said he called it the gift because he got to go home. He got to have children. He had grandchildren. And James Robinson didn't have that. He gave his life. He sacrificed his life so guys like Phil Hall and the other men in his company could survive.
Well, he was trying to protect the other men.
Right.
Okay.
He gave that to us. Now, this is the picture and you were in attendance at the dedication of this plaque in the City Hall, Westmont, the Village Hall, and Phil Hall is there to the left. The gentleman in the background, tall gentleman with the green shirt on, is Tom Robinson, which was James' younger brother. I'm there. The gentleman in the background to the right is the mayor of Westmont, Ron Gunther, and the village of Westmont was fantastic in doing all this dedication. Of course, Frank Trout is to the right.
Okay.
And I want to mention the plaque that was in that picture was donated by Western New York artist Scott Teller.
Oh, great.
And he donated that. That's a black granite plaque that is the same material on the Vietnam Wall.
Did an excellent job on that plaque also.
This is a plaque that was donated by the 1st Division, 16th Regiment, that was donated to James Robinson's old high school, Morton West. and Tom Robinson is holding the plaque. That's his younger brother. Okay.
Okay.
This is the post office in Westmont on August 30th, which would have been his 79th birthday. James Robinson, the post office was dedicated to him, and those are all the dignitaries. The gentleman by the flag next to me is the Congressman Sean Casten, who attended the ceremony, and he was responsible for bringing the thing.
You're missing a very important point about this post office dedication, and that is you.
Oh.
You made this happen. You put in innumerable hours, as your wife did, and also Frank Trout did.
Yep.
Got behind this project, started it from an idea, and brought it to fruition. Got the local congressman involved. It had to be approved at the highest levels of the government.
Yep.
And you deserve a fantastic debt of gratitude for all you did for this fellow's memory.
We're very gratified to see it, happen, because Representative Roscom, who was the one we originally proposed it to in July of 2018, it was passed into law in December of 2018, and then he had lost his re-election bid, and Congressman Casten was kind enough to pay honor to the former Congressman Roscom, and then to come to the ceremony and do what he did. Matter of fact, his daughter played in the band.
Oh, great. Well,
this is the post office, and it's now known as the James William Robinson Jr. Memorial Post Office. And it was dedicated on, as I said, would have been his 79th birthday, August 30th.
Mm-hmm.
That was the signage outside there at the post office. These are the mud soldiers that served with James in Vietnam the day he was killed. And they are attending a sneak preview of a movie I'll go into later called The Last Full Measure. They're actually at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base where the film was premiered, because a young man by the name of William Pitsenbarger with the Air Force died that same day and was later awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously.
In that same battle.
In that same battle, and the gentleman went out there to pay tribute, and they were partially responsible, besides Pitsenbarger's family and fellow Air Force crew, that 34 years after he was killed was finally awarded the Medal of Honor. I'll go into that a little bit later.
Okay.
Okay. This is after the post office dedication. The gentleman on the left is Phil Hall, and the gentleman on the right is Ken Mize. They were both there the day in Vietnam that James Robinson was killed, and as Phil said, basically saved their lives. They're kneeling, they're kind of crouching down, and what they're doing is they're putting a quarter on James Robinson's grave, which signifies that they were with him the day he died.
I see.
The next young man is Lester Weber, who was attending Hinsdale South High School, and he joined the Marine Reserves, and he was not cut out to be in high school, I guess, and he quit, and he went into Marines full-time, and he served almost 3 years in the Marine Corps before he was killed in Vietnam. Fascinating young man. They have a dedication to him at his old high school. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is the grave. Remember I told you the cemetery is the Clarendon Hills Cemetery.
Right.
And the 3 posthumous Medal of Honor recipients are all buried. This is the scene with the 3 American flags. The grave on the right is Lester Weber's grave, and I was overwhelmed to see that the grave in the middle is his father's grave, who served in the Marine Corps in World War II, came home, and the grave to the far left is his other brother, and none of those, the father and the son, none of them lived past 54 years old. And Lester Weber's grave, as I mentioned, is on the far right. You'll see a close-up shot of it, but it was a beautiful picture with and that's his grave. You can see the Medal of Honor.
Now, what did he do specifically to earn the Medal of Honor? Do you know the background of that
yes,
story?
Yes, I do. And as I said, it could be made into a movie. What it was is that they were in the rice paddies, and he took on the enemy, not only firing his weapon, but they were also involved in hand-to-hand combat.
Oh, boy.
And he charged the enemy positions, and he must have killed about 7 or 8 of the enemy before he was cut down.
In hand-to-hand combat.
In hand-to-hand combat, yeah. Well, he survived the hand-to-hand combat, but then when he went, he was shot. And
I see.
this is the grade school in Hinsdale that was named for him, where he attended, not named for him, but they have a memorial there. That's the grade school. You'll see the little memorial they have by the flag post. That's the next picture. There's the photo of the plaque and the school in the background dedicated to Lester Weber. And there's Hinsdale South High School that he attended, and inside the school they have this memorial for him in the lobby, main lobby, the next picture. So there is a tribute to him. Now, earlier I mentioned that there's a movie coming out. It was supposed to be released in October. They held it till January, and it's called The Last Full Measure. And in fact, this is the last movie Peter Fonda appeared in.
Oh, really?
So the story in the middle talks about the battle where the 39 soldiers were killed. William Pitsenbarger was an Air Force pararescue. And when the Army couldn't send in helicopters because of whatever the conditions were, there were specially trained Air Force men that would go in and drop the baskets in to pull the wounded soldiers out of battle.
They were called jungle penetrators.
The Air Force, William Pitsenbarger, was sent in. They lowered the basket. They were pulling up the wounded. And then because of the jungle overgrowth, the basket was getting hung up in the trees. So he went down and was guiding the men into the basket and sending them out. And the helicopter came under heavy enemy fire. And he waved off the helicopter. He didn't go up into the helicopter and stayed with the mud soldiers and fought alongside of them, and was killed shortly after that. And as I said, there he is there, William Pitsenbarger, young man.
Looks like he was an airman second class.
First class.
First class.
Yeah, he got probably another.
Got another
after
strike.
that, yeah. And that's the Air Force. What happened was he was originally in 1966, as I mentioned, James Robinson was awarded the Medal of Honor immediately after that battle. He was awarded the Top Air Force Cross, and it took 34 years till the year 2000 between his parents, the mud soldiers that he saved down there, because there's men that said I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for him, and then also his own family, as I said, the Air Force men he served with. It took 34 years to get his Medal of Honor awarded in 2000.
I also understand that he actually got some of the wounded soldiers evacuated on the helicopter.
Yeah.
And was in the process of evacuating more when the basket got hung up, and he elected to stay with the soldiers and fought the enemy.
That's exactly what he did.
So he did, in fact, save some people that
day. Oh, yes. Yeah, and the mud soldiers are the ones that were part of the group.
Right.
Now, Phil Hall was a technical advisor on the movie The Last Full Measure, which is directed by Todd Robinson. No connection to James Robinson, but I thought it was kind of interesting that the director of the movie was Todd Robinson. So the movie is going to be released in January, and I encourage everybody to see it. I have not seen it, but I heard from the mud soldiers it was very good. Most of the story are flashbacks to the battle, but the bulk of the story is talking about the process that they had to go through with the politicians to get this young man rightfully awarded the Medal of Honor.
Yeah, that was quite a good and appropriate upgrade of that award.
Yes. Now this is in our another neighboring community in Burr Ridge. This is their Veterans Memorial there. And maybe you want to read what Harry Truman said They have several plaques around her that pertain to veterans.
Well, it reads, "Our debt to the heroic men and valiant women in the service of our country can never be repaid. They have earned our undying gratitude. America will never forget their sacrifices. Harry S. Truman." And that apparently is a Navy memorial to the right.
Yes, and of course it honors all the services around her with different quotes.
I see.
The final photograph is a quote from George Patton, and his comment would, "It is foolish and wrong to mourn men who died. Rather, we should thank God such men lived." And of course that's General Patton said that, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and he really was a general that was respected by his men.
Yep.
And he's a story unto himself.
Oh, well, the movie was made of him, and
Yeah.
won the Academy Award.
Yeah.
And so, but it's been an interesting journey. And
So now,
you mentioned about the post office, like you getting me going back in 2011, which will be 9 years now.
wow, time flies.
Yeah, and the James Robinson thing started 3 years ago. That was that first phone call from Frank. When I look back at my records, and anybody coming to Chicago, they have to visit Cantini, which I brought you to. That is the First Division Museum, and they have tribute to. It's an amazing museum there, and they have the tribute to the Medal of Honor winners, and because James Robinson was First Division, his name is there, and he's honored.
Well, the story of these three young men that lost their lives and were awarded the Medal of Honor, this is a story you plan on sharing with as you go forward now. This is your next mission?
Well, I already gave one presentation on it to a senior residence, and it's, of course, in my area. And what was very gratifying was that most of the older people knew the Robinson family.
Well, yeah, it was somebody from their community.
And they could identify them. And I talked about Fred Lester. Oh, I went to that school as as a young kid. And then when I started talking about Lester Weber, I mean, they didn't know that there were 3 posthumous Medal of Honor recipients buried right there. The amazing fact is, we have the Abraham Lincoln National, Memorial Park cemetery there, and they have 1 Medal of Honor recipient
Is that right?
buried there, and his name is Theodore Hyatt. And Theodore Hyatt he died in 1900.
Wow.
He was a Civil War veteran, was awarded the Medal of Honor during the Civil War. He was with the Illinois Infantry, and then when he died, they buried him in a family plot out in Joliet area. And when the Abraham Lincoln Cemetery opened, they relocated his body to that, in 1999 when it opened. So you have 1 Medal of Honor, and here's this little neighborhood cemetery has 3.
Well, you did an amazing job of uncovering this little-known fact and getting them recognized by their local community. The newspapers there did a great job of coverage.
Yeah.
I think that's important to mention. People are a lot more aware now.
Tim Allen, who runs, they have a magazine, neighborhood magazine called Neighbors of Westmont, did a beautiful story.
Right.
And Our Suburban Life, Shaw Media, they've been very supportive. The Village Hall, as I mentioned, Mayor Ron Gunther, of course Frank Trout, and then you go to Western New York, and if it wasn't for Dorothy Furtney with the Made in America stores making arrangements through Scott Teller to bring the plaque to Chicago.
Right.
So I have to mention the M&M limo that brought the plaque to Chicago. So you could see it.
They rented a limo to drive from Western New York to Chicago.
No, they had a motor coach.
Motor coach.
That was their last tour of the year, and Dorothy at the Made in America stores in East Aurora, Elma, out there.
Right.
I've
been there. Yeah.
She said, "Why don't I put the plaque on the bus?" And the bus brought it to Des Plaines, and I picked it up there. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is so interesting, and uncovering history is something I've always been very fond of, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this show also are interested in that. But more importantly, it's a history lesson. It's a history lesson for all ages, particularly the young people. I want to think that they're going to get exposed a lot more to these stories, and as we go forward, and recognize who the real heroes in our country are. And you're doing a great job of bringing these stories forward.
Well, I want to, I have 6 grandchildren, 3 girls, 3 boys, and I want each of them to have a part of this history, that they know that these were sacrifices made that now give them the liberties and freedoms they're enjoying. And you have grandkids, and you want them to share in this history and not just let it, blow away in the dust.
Absolutely. It doesn't just happen.
Right.
It takes a lot of work, sacrifice, blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
Now, Hal, this is your second project since we started this journey, or since you started this journey. And going forward, you have plans to do more of this?
Yes, I do. And my charming bride, who you know, Nancy, is really on me to write the book.
Great.
So that I have to, after the holidays, really focus on that.
We'll certainly promote your book here on the network, and let us know when it's completed, and I'll be sure to share it with the audience.
As you know, Denny, we've been friends for over 50 years, and we've seen what's happened with our education system.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of revisionists out there, and there's been some really bad things said about the Sullivan family and about other things, that it's just a way of getting attention when they didn't look at the sacrifices and what the contributions were. So you always have somebody out there that wants to talk about making history bad, when really it's good. And it's what we need to know, and our kids need to know, because without the history, you have nothing.
Well, exactly. It goes back to the days when the country was founded by Columbus.
Yeah.
There's people now trying to disparage Columbus.
Yeah.
But, if it wasn't for Columbus, we wouldn't have a country that has been the leader in the world.
So, bad news sells.
Yeah,
I guess that's the best way to put it. And we need to have, good news. And we have to honor those. Like I said, going back to the beginning of my presentation, you said about the hard work. That's true. But the gratification you get hearing a kid come up to you, a student coming up to you, thanking you, going out of their way to thank you, and then saying, I didn't know that. And teachers. And you go, it's like, what do you say, paying it forward?
Play it forward.
Play it forward.
Pay it forward.
Pay it forward.
Yeah, there's a movie about that.
And, it's like giving them something that they could go home and talk about. Maybe they ask a question of their grandparents, parents, or whatever. And I encourage them. I say, go home and talk about it. Find out who participated in these things. I think I'm sure you do too. I think back to my childhood, growing up with my grandmother, living above my grandmother, and my uncles all served in World War II. My dad was in World War II, and not talking to them because they didn't talk about it. And then they were gone, and it was too late.
Yeah.
So we need to share. It's part of our family history.
Yeah.
Not only our nation, it's our families.
Definitely.
So.
Well, going forward, I hope that this network can continue to bring forth stories like what you're uncovering. You certainly got a welcome mat out for you anytime you want to come back and share updates or new stories with us. And I want to thank you for coming again. And both he and I are going to be busy this Saturday, actually. We volunteered with Wreaths Across America to put Christmas wreaths on veterans' graves at the veteran cemeteries throughout the United States. I would encourage everybody to look at that as a very worthwhile charity. They could always use donations to purchase wreaths. They purchase hundreds of thousands of them. And of course, they need volunteers to go out there and do that before Christmas. So I'm glad to say that him and I are going to be participating in that.
You're going to be doing it here, and I'm going to be doing it back in my neighborhood up in at the Abraham Lincoln Cemetery. And three of my grandkids who live, in Chicago and can participate. That's my wish list for my Christmas gift. for them to participate.
That's great. That's
Okay.
great. Well, listen, I'm glad that you all were able to join us. I hope you enjoyed the show. We're going to continue this project going forward. There's many, many stories out there that need to be told. And thank you for your time, and we appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hal Burke. I am the president of Victory and Valor Memories, LLC. I give historical presentations about the 5 Sullivan brothers from Waterloo, Iowa that were killed in the Battle of Guadalcanal during World War II aboard the USS Juno, and the historical connection to Alfred Eisenstadt's iconic photograph of the kissing sailor photographed in New York Times Square on VJ Day. I'd be happy to talk to you about giving a historical presentation. Would you please contact me at hbarep@att.net or 708-387-7779. Thank you.